Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We're so happy to see you. I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, our guest speaker today. Very accomplished gentleman and a man, I would say, of great heart and simpático.
Oh, gracias. Gracias, Milton.
Jesus Nebot is an award-winning filmmaker, as well as a renowned inspirational speaker and transformational trainer who has lectured in over 30 American states and 10 additional countries around the world for educational, cultural, nonprofit, business, and civic organizations. His mission is to inspire personal and social healing and transformation through his speaking engagements, training seminars, and artistic endeavors, including writing, producing, directing, and acting. Jesus is the producer and host of Time Warner's The Love Show. It's a cable talk show where guests are welcome to explore the frontiers of consciousness and the healing power of love in our lives, in our communities, and in the world. Mr. Nebot is also the writer, director, producer, and star behind the critically acclaimed illegal immigration feature, No Turning Back, winner of 23 International Film Festival Awards. To better illustrate today's presentation entitled Illegal Immigration, a Humanitarian Perspective. And to introduce Jesus, here is a trailer of his film.
Thank you so much, Milton. Milton has served this community college for many years, and it is thanks to him that I'm here. And now that you are retiring, I just want to dedicate this event to you, and have a moment for everybody to recognize you with a big round of applause to me. Thank you. So you just saw the trailer of the film No Turning Back. Now, this is a film that I believe has been screened at least once, if not twice, in college. Has anybody seen this film? Raise your hand. Beautiful. Okay, that is how they're leading by example, because we saw Kathleen and Renata that are at the student activities.
Was it just us?
Well, I think a couple of people are a little shy. But I love that you're here, and actually I want to start by just acknowledging you both too for hosting me, as well as, of course, Milton. And also for having that vision that we would celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month by doing a program that is really not the most popular program, right? It's not about playing salsa music and getting enchiladas and some good food, but it's about really having the courage to talk about an issue that affects our community deeply, and an issue that is actually affecting all our country and actually the world. This is one of those social relevant issues that you, as a generation, are inheriting. So the fact that we are taking a little bit of time to talk about it, specifically now before the elections, I think is very important, and it's the best way I feel in my heart you can honor the spirit of Hispanic Heritage Month. So I want to thank you so much for that. And of course I want to thank you, each one of you, for being here, for whether you're here because you're just here to maybe get a credit or because you were invited by somebody else, but I do appreciate you being here and being present and taking this opportunity to share from your heart, because there will be an opportunity for you to do so, and to enrich our presentation. So thank you so much for being here. As a matter of fact, let's give each other a good round of applause. Yeah. So this film, for those of you that have not seen it, I want to say that I believe there is a new screening coming up. Is it the 22nd?
Yes. At what time? I don't know.
October 22nd? What time? 12:30 p.m. Right here. Okay, so that's your opportunity. If anybody wants to copy the film, I have 2 or 3 copies. I can also make them available afterwards. But of course, it would be best if you just come and see it with a group of people. And it talks about actually an immigrant that came all the way from Honduras, after Honduras was hit by Hurricane Mitch. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Hurricane Mitch, but back at the end of 1998, this hurricane hit all Central America. It actually killed 10,000 people in Honduras, just in Honduras. And it left 40% of the population homeless. Now imagine a hurricane in the US that leaves 100 million people homeless. That's what happened over there. During that hurricane, Pablo lost his wife. He was actually working at his university. He was a teacher at the university in San Pedro Sula. When he came home, there was no home, just the body of his wife. And his 5-year-old daughter crying over the body of his wife. So they, without any other possibility of help, immigrated north. They came through Salvador, through Guatemala, through Mexico, finally to the US, except that when they came here, from that moment on, they were considered, as we refer to, as illegal aliens. They were not received with the solidarity that maybe people from Katrina at some point received later on when they went to Houston or Atlanta, but they were just received as, in a way, illegal aliens. By the way, can you guys hear me better this way or with the microphone? Because I noticed that the microphone has a little bit of echo. Can you guys hear me well this way? Is it better for you this way or with the microphone? This way? Yeah. Okay, great. Love to use my voice. All right, we will leave this because we may ask questions, and this will be your opportunity to speak up, and if you cannot speak loud, then I'll give you the microphone. We'll do that. Okay, so the film talks about illegal immigration. It gives a humanitarian perspective to this issue. It talks about the role of the media. It talks about the diversity that exists in our country and in the world, and the importance of us to let go of our limited beliefs of one another if we want to live peacefully in a world as diverse as ours. And to be honest with you, that's the spirit of all my presentations. Just before this presentation, I was talking to some other students and staff about diversity. And to me, whether we talk about immigration or diversity or leadership, at the end of the day, it's really about how we can transcend some of those limited beliefs that are not allowing us to be everything that we can be and find the best possible solutions to the challenges that we're facing. Especially when I talk to a young generation like you guys, because you are inheriting a lot of different challenges. And what is clear is that we're finding that the politicians are not really there to find good, positive solutions in many cases. Why is that? Well, the main reason is because the job of politicians is to get elected, right? And when do they want to get elected? Like November, right? In a month? Or maybe in 2 years? So, to be honest with you, politicians are not visionary in nature. That's not what they are in their job. Their job is to get elected very soon, and their job is also to get enough funds for the campaign so they can get elected. And those funds come from different corporations that somehow find their way into the political system and through lobbies and whatnot. And what we end up is with a system that is imperfect. So when it comes to solving these huge challenges that we're facing as a society, especially you, like climate change or perhaps immigration, we really need to, each one of us, step into our leadership and see what we can individually do to be the solution to these problems, and not expect that the politicians or the president or the nonprofits are going to be, or the government are going to be the solution to them. You follow me? So my goal with this presentation is not only that you gain some information about this issue, but eventually that you can open your heart to possible solutions to it, so that you can eventually be instrumental in creating some necessary change, and perhaps a change in perception of the issue, so that we can eventually solve it with good, effective, long-term solutions. But before doing that, I want to take a little moment, as we are having some students come in, to get to know you personally a little bit. So raise your hand if you're an immigrant. Okay, take just a moment, those of you that are raising your hand, to tell me your country of origin.
I'm Cape Verde.
Cape Verde? Dominican Republic?
Egypt.
Egypt, beautiful. Who else raised their hand? Brazil.
Angola.
Angola, wow.
West Africa, Guinea-Bissau.
There you go. I don't think I can, repeat that, but you said, go ahead. Chile, beautiful. Cambodia, awesome. Ecuador, great. Well, so I guess most of you relate, at least the ones that have raised your hand relate to this issue of immigration. Okay, raise your hand if you are the son or a daughter of an immigrant. Okay, so now we're seeing other immigrants. Where were your parents from?
Haiti and Trinidad.
From Europe, Eastern Bloc.
Okay. Raise your hand if you are the grandson or granddaughter of an immigrant. All right, by now, I think everybody has kind of almost raised their hand. I'm not going to ask you to keep saying countries, but I think we all get the feeling that this is a very diverse audience in that, you know, it kind of portrays what is the diversity of America. I mean, this is a community college, by and large. Most of you live in the community, and yet you come from very different backgrounds. And by the way, as I was talking before with Milton, you know, the definition of being an immigrant is to enter and settle in an area to which one is not native. It doesn't necessarily have to be a country. So we found out that Milton was an immigrant to Massachusetts because he comes from Providence. and you know, in truth, you know, I'm just saying this because for some of us, this is a direct experience that we have, what it means to be an immigrant. For some of us, may not be such a direct experience, but I'm going to tell you how you can make it direct for you. We all in life, if you think about your history and what you've done, we all have at some point felt out of place, like we didn't belong. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe it was the first time that you came to this college. You didn't know anybody. You didn't, you know, had friends here. You didn't know where to go around, where the class was. In that moment, you felt a little awkward, different. You follow me? And maybe you felt like everybody else knew and that you were the only one that didn't. So that's kind of an idea that I want you to be aware of so that you get that understanding of what it may mean for somebody to come here for the first time and experience that sense of being different, being like he doesn't belong. Okay? The reason I say this is because this country is obviously made of immigrants. We all know that. We all have already acknowledged that by raising our hands. And yet, we're finding ourselves in this situation in which we are not able to pass good, positive legislation to deal with the fact that we have among us, in our communities, 12 million people without documents. 12 million people. Okay? And it has been years upon years, and we're not passing legislation. Why? Well, precisely because, as I was saying, politicians, they are concerned about, you know, getting elected, and sometimes the constituents are perhaps in some cases misinformed, and they have some biases and some concerns and fears, and basically they are not taking a stand for possible solutions that eventually I feel could be beneficial for all of us, not just for the immigrants, but ultimately for us as Americans as well. Okay? So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story that I think could be helpful to set up the tone of this particular conversation that we're going to have for the next hour. And that is to tell you about me. I was born in Spain myself. And very early in age, I had an experience. It's one of my earliest memories that really informed me and perhaps was one of the reasons that I am here today with you guys. And it happened on Christmas Eve. And surely I was with my family, celebrating the day, having dinner. And after we went to the dessert, and we were going to get to the moment where there were some gift exchanges. And in that moment, my father told me, Jesus, close your eyes and open your hand. So I did. And I felt like a piece of paper. He said, open your eyes. It was a bill of 100 pesetas, the national coin, which is roughly $7. And my father told me, Jesus, you're not a toddler anymore. You're a grown-up kid. You're 5 years old now. So I'm giving you money for the first time so you can use it to buy whatever you want. Wow. First time in my life that I had money, right? That I could do something with it. Well, shortly after, my parents left to church. In Spain, it's a Catholic country, and it was perhaps more before than now, tradition to do the midnight mass on Christmas Eve. I had a cold, so they didn't take me with them. They went with my younger brother and younger sister. 4 of them left. And shortly after, when they were gone, somebody knocked on the door. And I thought, well, that must be my father. He forgot the keys, whatnot. I opened the door, and I found in front of me this lady that looked different. She had like a dark olive skin. She had a very colorful dress, but it was kind of torn apart. She was breastfeeding a baby, and she was holding another child in her other hand. And this lady asked me, can I talk to your dad? I said, no, he's gone. Oh, well, can I talk to your mom? I said, no, that they're both gone. They went to church with my younger brother and sister. I'm the only one here. And she said, oh. And then she proceeded to leave. But I was so curious, right? 5 years old. So I couldn't stop. I'd say, lady, And she turned around and I said, but what is it you want? And she told me, well, I'm an immigrant. I'm new to this area. I'm a gypsy woman. And I don't have enough to feed my kids, so I'm just going around the neighborhood asking for some charity. And I said, I can help. And she said, you can? Sure. I reached down my pocket. I got the bill that my father gave to me, and I gave it to her. And she told me, no, you can't do that. And I said, yes, I can. It's my money. And she got teary-eyed. She was really emotional. She said, oh, thank you. Now I can buy the milk for my kids and the bread, and it's going to make such a wonderful Christmas. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas. And she left. In that moment, I got it. 5-year-old, and I got it. I got it that there would have never been a candy or a little toy that would have bought with that money that would have given me more joy than the joy I was experiencing helping this lady that just came by and needed support. Why am I telling you this story? Because in truth, it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the fact that I was 5 years old. As I was sharing before with my friend that had a 4-year-old kid. At that age, we're open, we're curious, we're willing. We don't have anything in our mind that is stopping us from relating to others. We don't have all these preconceived notions and this education and these ideas and these opinions and the media telling us. So we are so human, so we are so willing to relate to each other. So what I need you for the next hour is to, for a moment, suspend some of the thoughts and beliefs that you may have about immigration, some of the preconceived notions, and open up your heart as if you're a 5-year-old kid, and see if with that you can really receive this information in such a way that not only would be helpful for you to understand this issue better, but eventually bring some possible transformation for you as a human being to relate to others in a more positive way. You guys ready for that? Okay, great. Well, thank you. By the way, later on in life, I actually became an immigrant, like an illegal alien myself. How did that happen? Well, when it was time for me to have higher education, I didn't have the money to do that, so I actually went north from Spain to France, and I was working there as an undocumented worker. I was there picking up fruit from sunrise to sunset. I was painting houses, doing whatever it took so that I could eventually continue my education. So I have had that experience, of course. And what's interesting is when I went back to Spain, I'm just going to continue with it. I couldn't continue my higher education as I anticipated, not because of the monies that I had saved, but because of the fact that in Spain at the time, it was mandatory to do the military service. And you know what? What was my dream as a kid? My dream was really to work for world peace. My dream was really to have the opportunity to contribute to a world where we all could get along. Since I was a kid. Maybe since I had that experience when I was 5 years old. I don't know. And so for me, it didn't make sense that if I want to work for world peace, I would spend a whole year of my life training to eventually go to war and to bear arms and to look at neighbors as possible enemies. And so at the time, the law was changing, but there was not an opportunity for me to do a social service or do the Peace Corps or other possibilities that now exist. And therefore, although I didn't have to go to jail, thank God, because the law was changing, I couldn't continue my higher education to become a diplomat as I wanted to and work for United Nations or UNESCO or be an instrument to work for world peace. So that's how I ended up to becoming a filmmaker. And by the way, the people that inspired me to become a filmmaker, they were not other filmmakers. I didn't know anybody in my family or my immediate friends that were doing anything like this. The people that inspired me were actually spiritual teachers and spiritual masters. And if you think about it, all the spiritual teachers, I'm talking about all walks of life, okay? I'm thinking about Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, it doesn't matter. They were all storytellers. They all told stories that eventually would bring some wisdom to us, that would awaken to our full potentiality, to our capacity to love one another, right? So I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe if, let's say, Jesus would be here nowadays, he would very well be a filmmaker, because there is no more powerful way to tell a story and reach out to an audience than through film. And that's what took me into this journey to making a film like No Turning Back. By the way, I don't consider myself, although I was writing, directing, producing, and acting, ultimately I think that my biggest contribution was none of those, but simply to be anchored in that vision of what I wanted to say, and with that vision inspire others to bring it to fruition in this film. Because as you know, making a film costs a lot of money. It's a collaborative effort. I need to give credit to all of them. So it was just simply to be a leader and to stand for the possibility of making this film. And it is, in fact, a film that has won a lot of awards, and a film that has opened the doors for me to come to colleges and speak about immigration, among other issues. But listen, I want to make this presentation as relevant to you as possible. So now, with the help of a volunteer that has good handwriting, I would like to invite somebody to come here to the stage to help us with something that we need to write down. Who would like to come over and join me? Who has good handwriting? Who wants to be a volunteer?
I don't.
Huh?
I don't.
You don't? You do? Okay, come in. Let's give him a good round of applause. Oh, you have the markers. Thank God for that. Thank you, Renata. By the way, I have acknowledged Kathleen, but Kathleen, Renata, and Marianne, they all work together. And I gotta tell you how inspirational it is to me that all three people from this department are here together. That doesn't happen to me ever. That you are taking time to be here with your students to eventually also learn something about this and to lead by example, meaning like taking some time off of your regular curriculum and academics to learn something that may be different that you may not learn in class. So thank you so much for that. And what is your name? Benjamin? Ah, Benjamin. Good handwriting. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Okay, we don't have a lot of time. I want each one of you to think about a possible question that you may have about immigration, or otherwise, a possible comment that you may have about immigration. Either or. You may have an opinion, an idea, a belief. It's all good. We're here to explore them. We're here to hear you. And if you have, that opinion and you want to share it, this is the time to do it. Of course, this is voluntarily, but I want you to just raise your hand. You can say your name, and you can state your question or state your comment. And Benjamin is going to write it down here succinctly. So who would like to ask me a question or make a comment about the subject of illegal immigration? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nelly. When you came to the United States, you was illegal?
Was I illegal?
Yes.
Actually, I came as a tourist, and eventually, to answer that particular question, I was able to get a visa as what they call person with extraordinary ability in the arts, because I had worked extensively in other countries. That happened about 12, 13 years ago, okay? It is a very difficult category to qualify for, obviously not the one that most people can take advantage of. Thank you for the question. No, we're not going to ask, it's more of a personal question. Go ahead.
I'm wondering what the impact is on a person when they are labeled as illegal.
Okay. Impact of a person when it's labeled as illegal. You can write down. That's a very good question. I thank you so much for that.
There are organizations for immigrants that they can join for something for help when they need anything about any service about, for example.
Impact of the label illegal.
For example, there are any organization.
Just write down a little, not as big, but anyway, you're doing good. Sorry for that.
There are any organization of immigrants that help the illegal people that
Yeah.
don't have to.
I got your question.
Yeah.
So just possible support for illegal immigrants, organizations that assist undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
And you're doing great. You know the second question?
No, what is it?
We're going to have a second assistant here. I forgot. It's about good handwriting and kind of fast handwriting. All right. So who else had a question?
You talk about sense of being like feeling not belong to a place. You say you've been here for long enough. Do you feel like you belong now?
Do I feel like I belong? That's also personal, so that not to get him to write too much. I do feel that I belong, but you know what? I feel that I belong everywhere I am. It is just it's just an understanding and awareness and a decision. To be honest with you, it's a choice. No matter what I am, I belong to that place. I have lived in many countries, and at the end of the day, if you have that choice, it will allow you to eventually feel like you belong. I consider myself a world citizen, meaning that it doesn't matter where I live, I feel like I'm at home. It's a beautiful way to consider, even though, of course, you can have your own nationality and have your own country of origin, but it will allow you to, create better relationships and feel better, more integrated. Okay, next question. Other way in the back.
Actually, I would like to make a question class followed by a quick statement, if I could.
Okay, as long as it's brief, you can go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I like to make this difference. I don't like to call me illegal. I like to, I don't know if you consider this like an euphemism, but I like to say they are undocumented. I like to make this point, which is very clear for me.
Yep.
That, you can be a undocumented, but a legitimate citizen in the country, you know what I'm saying? Because people who are illegal, usually when they work and they are on the books, they pay their taxes, right? But when they
True.
apply for a college like this one, for instance, which is considered community college, they have to pay the double the fee because they're considered illegal or non-resident. But my point is, you might be a legal non-resident, but you are a legitimated one because you pay taxes and you belong to the community. So why the college, considering that we have a lot of smart people working here, they do not open their mind and change that policy themselves?
Okay, that's a very good question. I don't know if Benjamin is up for it, but I think I got the spirit of it. Impact of labor of immigrants, and then we're gonna put this expanded. Just put the word expanded, so that I really address your question, which I understood. It doesn't need to be written because Benjamin, of course, is ready to sit down. All right, that's good. Anyway, I promise I will address that. Go ahead. Any other question or comment? Renata, go ahead.
I have a question. Well, a resource I hope. We always see what illegal immigrants are, how they're portrayed here, either in news stories, media, so on. Where are there resources that we could learn more about what made this family, this person, so troubled in their own country that they would need to try to go through the challenges of illegal immigration?
I think it's a little bit related to this, possible support services and places where one can get more information. So, we're gonna leave it at this. It is not an easy question to answer because it varies locally, and but definitely there is a little bit of deficiency. So we'll address that a little bit. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Is it the same to be documented in all the other countries? Like, is it as difficult to become documented in the other countries as it is in the U.S.? Because I know personally, firsthand, that it's difficult to become documented in the U.S. It's a long process, very expensive. Is it the same for the other countries as well?
Is it the same in other countries? You can write it down, Benjamin. Okay, he can do that. Okay, and I did see a couple of other hands. Go ahead.
Obviously, there's some controversy in the U.S. over
Yes, definitely.
relations to Mexico. In your opinion, how much of an impact does the language barrier have in this controversy?
Okay, the impact of the language barrier. Impact of language barrier. Okay, great. Kathleen?
When you're talking about that, if
Yes.
you don't mind, I would love to hear your thoughts on what he was talking about,
Yes.
that it was all children over this past year. That's a different kind of circumstance.
Okay.
That's been very complicated.
Some of the recent immigrants, kids that have been here, just to talk a little bit about that as well, that you may have heard in the news not too long ago. Go ahead.
Like you said in the beginning, immigrants, Obama to be in office like 10 years or 8 years, they get a power of an immigrant. We have to stop them when it comes election to come to us, ask for vote, and they're not doing nothing for us.
Okay, we'll talk about the political perspective and climate and why maybe that's happening.
Yes.
Okay? Political situation regarding immigrants and inaction. Okay, all the way in the back.
This may be more of a personal question, but
Go ahead.
how do you feel that we should perceive illegal immigrants or regular immigrants as Americans?
I couldn't, to be honest with you, hear you very well.
How do you think that we should perceive people who are considered to be illegal immigrants?
Love the question. This is a beautiful question. We were just talking about labels and the impact of labels and how our responses are, related to that. So, this label immigrant expanded. I'm going to go there and what is maybe a possible label that could be more helpful. Great. All right. One last chance. Any comment or question? If not, we'll address this and I'll give you another opportunity later on. But All right, well then, thank you, Benjamin. You did great. Awesome. Thank you. All right, I do see that there are a lot of questions about this, which is a topic that I love. Okay, so let's start with that. From a legal perspective, this is not, I'm not talking about good, bad, right, or wrong. Okay, I'm not having an opinion. I'm just saying from a legal perspective, we refer to these 12 million that are among us without proper documentation as illegal aliens. Okay? And quite frankly, yes, I feel this is not a label that is helpful. And we're going to explore that very, briefly if we can. But let me ask you this. What's that the word alien elicit in you? Just tell me. What does the word alien elicit in you? Foreign?
Not of this world.
None of this world, out of the planet, yeah?
Unwelcome.
Unwelcome? UFO? Alien? Completely different, almost like strange, right? Different, strange, alienation. So, that is a word that, as you can see, it's already in our minds creating a sense of separation, right? And even a sense of fear, like out of this world, Now, what about the word illegal? What does the word illegal elicit in you when you hear illegal? Sometimes they refer to as the illegals, just like that. Go ahead. Out of law, yes. What else? Criminal. Criminal? Discriminated. So let's talk about that for a second. Do you know that out of the 12 million people that are among us, half of them came here legally? Meaning they came here with a tourist visa or a student visa or a working visa, whatever the case, and then they overstayed their stay. In other words, they stayed longer than they could. Half of them. The other half of them, in fact, crossed the border illegally. But do you know that crossing the border illegally is a violation of the civic code? Not the criminal code, not the civil. There is a distinction. The criminal means that there was an intent or that somebody was harmed by the act. The civil code means that that's not necessarily the case. Why I'm talking about this and why this distinction is very important? Because if we are honest in this room, we all have violated the civic code at one time or another. Now let me ask you this, and I appreciate your honesty. Have you ever drunk a beer or any alcoholic beverage before you were of age? Raise your hand. Before you were 21, yes, of course. All right, okay, I'll make it easy for you, because I know there are some staff here and some teachers, and maybe. Let's make it easy. Raise your hand if you have ever driven over the speed limit.
Every day.
Yeah. And when you say every day, I'm not here to condone that you do that, right? The same way that I'm not condoning somebody to cross the border without papers. But what I'm saying is that's a violation of the civic code. Legally speaking, it's the same violation. It's not criminal, it's civic. Now, do we go calling each other illegal drivers? No, we even laugh about it. No, what we do is we pay a fine, we pay for that, and eventually we're able to move on with our lives, which is a little bit what we're trying to do with comprehensive immigration reform. Let's have them pay a fine, let's have them pay for that particular violation, and eventually have a path, if they have not violated anything else, to incorporate into our society. And we're not able to do that. By the way, have you heard the term, all the people that are giving them jobs? What we know about those 12 million is that among the ones that are able to work, 96% are working and 75% are working within the books, which is what you were saying all the way in the back. 75%. Now, have you heard the term illegal businessmen or illegal employers? No, it's the same violation, but we don't hear that. Do you realize how illegal alien is not a neutral term? It does immediately create a sense of criminality and otherness and strange, when in fact their violation is one that, legally speaking, from that frame, is comparable to driving over the speed limit. Just something for us to think about. So surely, yes, I agree, to answer your question in the back, that we need to find a more neutral term. A more neutral term could be undocumented immigrant. That could be a more neutral term, or undocumented worker. Not the one that I think is still totally helpful, which I will talk later on, but the one that maybe is more neutral. By the way, I want to tell you something. This whole thing about illegal alien, it actually started very recently in our history. It dates back to 1922. Before, we just had immigrants coming to this country. That's how this country was made. And we needed them. We needed them to build our railroad and to take care of our agricultural needs. And they came from China, from Japan. They came from, eventually from Mexico as well, right? And even if you would come for another purpose, like let's say, in the gold rush, people would come here to, get gold. If you were not from the country, so to speak, you would have to pay a higher tax. But there was no such a thing as illegal alien. So what happened in 1922? This is an important historical fact that we need to be aware of. Well, what happened is that earlier on, in 1918, we had World War I. Our country needed a lot of American soldiers to go overseas to the battlefield. And when we did that, we needed to bring workers to fill their positions, their jobs, to keep the economy going. But guess what? When those soldiers, after the war was over, came back home, and they found that their jobs were taken by an immigrant, it became a political problem. And that's when the Border Patrol was created. At that time, not before, just at that time. Now, mind you, that later on we had World War II. And same thing happened, you could argue. We needed a lot of Americans in the battlefield, right? And we needed now people to come and fill those jobs. But because we had the Border Patrol, then what we created is a guest worker program. We called it the Bracero program. We invited people to come here because we needed them. But then, 1945, war is over, soldiers come back home, the jobs are taken, political problem. And that was one of the reasons that the Bracero program was ended. What I'm trying to bring to your attention is that historically speaking, we have embraced immigrants until it became a political problem. And this political problem exists nowadays because of the fact that a lot of people have ideas, concepts, misconceptions at times of what an undocumented immigrant does or doesn't do. Now, I'm going to invite you to actually share with me what are some of the ideas that you hear maybe in the news or in the media through your peers or through politicians for that matter that may create anti-immigrant sentiment? What are some of the ideas that we have about these so-called illegal aliens? Go ahead.
They, according to some people, they take away the jobs of other Americans.
They come here to take our jobs. We hear that. What else do we hear that is basically creating that sentiment?
They don't bother to learn our language.
They don't bother to learn a language. What else?
That they're on food stamps and Medicare and taking government money.
They're taking many money from the government, food stamps. Okay. What else?
They're drained on our educational system.
They're drained the educational system. Go ahead.
Possible involvement in the drug cartel.
Possible involvement in the drug cartel. So let's start with that one. Listen, I want to answer all of them, but it's just beautiful that there are so many, right? No wonder. Have you heard they don't pay taxes, for example? That's another biggie, which is what you were saying in the back. They don't pay taxes. The drug cartel, because the drug cartel, I think, is more of a more of a recent thing. It's not happening through years upon years. Okay? But what we're not aware of is that, there are a lot of people that are desperate in many countries, not just in Mexico, but, you could argue in Afghanistan and where, that their way of living has been depleted, is gone. And now they are being lured by people that are doing something illegal, right? Like selling drugs. And guess what? They're selling drugs because America provides the perfect market for it. We are the biggest demand. We want them, and we are demanding them. So surely there's always going to be somebody that is going to offer them, and it's going to lure the local people that are desperate to make a living, to contribute somehow, or to collaborate, or simply to not say anything about it, right? And you know what these drug dealers, they do, actually? They come here, they sell drugs here in America, and then they use the money that they get to buy arms in the U.S., because they cannot get them back home. And then they go back home, and they terrorize their population back home, right? So when you hear about the young kids that are coming, when you hear about this recent issue, Kathleen, there were the young kids, a lot of them are coming because these parents are desperate, and they hope that the kids can be saved somehow, and maybe they have a better opportunity to be integrated, to have a refugee status, partly because the communities are terrorized by these drug cartels. Partly. But we need to see the correlation and the interrelation and how we are all kind of co-creators of these conditions. And also we need to be mindful that the reason that this is a biggie is because the media will always make news of things that are, that are, I guess, in their idea, worthy of news, things that will get the audience to listen to or to view the news. So the media is not going to talk about the 12 million people that are here working peacefully, contributing to our economy. They're going to talk about that 1% that are involved in criminal activity. And then what happens is when we hear that in the media, we make this extrapolation. Oh, okay, well, we got to be careful. They are dangerous. They are drug dealers. Just because 1%, and I'm giving you a very rough estimate, are involved in some criminal activity, and are the ones that are covered by the media. Do you understand? Now, you have talked about jobs that take our jobs. What we know, and by the way, everything I'm going to share with you is factual, meaning that there are studies proving what I said to you. I will not bother you with a lot of statistics, but I encourage you, if anybody is interested, come after the presentation. I can share some of the sources with you. What we know is that, in fact, they complement our workforce. How is that? Well, in truth, immigrants, are coming here to take the jobs that Americans that are more sophisticated in nature, more older as well, as a workforce older, and more educated won't do for that rate. Now, let me clarify. I totally get that there are Americans that will be happy to pick up fruit from sunrise to sunset for $15 an hour. No question about it. And at the same time, I can tell you, factually speaking, there are no Americans that will do that for $7 an hour. They just don't. They just don't. So we need them. They are complementing our workforce. Okay? When they complement our workforce, we're getting a situation in which, just so that you have an idea, they are we're increasing the productivity. We know through the Bush years, because we're looking at statistics always a few years back. During Bush years, the productivity doubled. The wages are stagnant, and it's been so ever since. So what that tells you is that we're more productive, but the wages are stagnant because of the fact that these immigrants are making our economy more productive. I'm not saying that this is an ideal situation. I'm just saying that there is a fact. And by the way, in doing so, a lot of industries, American companies, are able to stay in the US. Have you heard of globalization and outsourcing? Have you heard of companies that are going back to Asia or to Mexico to have a factory, or China, right? They have to take the factory elsewhere. Well, guess what? They do that because it's too expensive to pay a workforce here. But if they have immigrants that they can pay $7 an hour, that allows certain industries to stay in the US. And in that industry, surely is giving jobs to Americans as well that are probably higher paid at higher levels of employment. You guys understand that? So, you have a question? Go ahead.
I'm just confused as to why America prides itself on being a melting pot, a land of opportunity and freedom, but a lot of people don't want to share it with anyone.
Okay.
It's almost like we pride ourselves on being so great. So why wouldn't we want to be diverse and allow people to come here and share what we have? And it's just really confusing to me as to why we're supposed to be this melting pot in such a diverse country, and then once it becomes that, it's a problem.
We're really addressing that as we speak, and we will keep addressing this. And your question is a beautiful question, and it's the question that that you have when you have an open heart, and you just are not so you don't have such a preconceived idea about the issue, and your opinion already made up. So I thank you for that question. The reason is because there are a lot of myths that exist, including they are taking our jobs, they are drug dealers that we're addressing, or for example, they take they don't pay taxes. When in fact, studies show that undocumented immigrants pay more taxes than Americans. More taxes, not less, but more. How is that? Okay? Well, we all pay sales taxes when we buy goods, right? Or whatever other tax. They don't discriminate. You're from this country, then you pay, but if not, you don't pay. Everybody pays, right? Or if it's another tax, property tax, whatever. But there is a big distinction, and that's the one that our gentleman all the way in the back brought here, which is the majority of them are working in the books. How is that? Well, because either they have a fake social security, it could be a social security from a deceased person, a social security depot somewhere, or because they are assigned a identification tax number, an ITN number by the employer to put them in the books. Okay? So the employer, what he does is this. This is your ITN number, I put you in the books, I pay you your minimum wage, okay? And then of course, I retain monies that are going to the federal government and monies that are going to Social Security Administration. Now, most people that are working for $7, $8, $9 an hour, at the end of the year, receive a check from the government, a refund, tax refund. You guys have heard of that? Well, no, if you are an undocumented immigrant. You don't. And that's why studies show that in the span of their lives, undocumented immigrants not only contribute more than Americans, but actually they contribute way more than what they receive in services. Specifically, $80,000 more is their contribution in the span of their lives than what they get from services. Even though another perception is that they come here to take food stamps and education, etc., which is supposedly creating a problem for our services. By the way, let me tell you this very interesting statistic. In 2009, the Social Security Administration made this claim that they had $590 billion with a B, of monies that belonged to undocumented immigrants that they couldn't give to them because the situation was not legalized. These are monies that belong to people that have worked among us for years upon years. Some of them retired, right? Now they cannot claim any benefit. They are not getting a pension. They're not getting unemployment. They're not getting a refund. In fact, they are not getting most of the social services that we imagine that they do. They do get food stamps. And you know what? This is funny. Out of the general population, 73% of the people that qualify for food stamps are getting them, are claiming them. Among the undocumented immigrants, only 45% of the ones that can actually qualify are claiming that benefit. Only 45%. If they would come here for a free ride, don't you think that they would claim in everything that they can? Only 45%. We don't know why. Some people speculate maybe there is fear, maybe they are pride, maybe they don't even know about it. But only 45%. They are way claiming less benefits. The other benefit, yes, is education. It's true. Education until they graduate from high school. Afterwards, no. And that's why a lot of them cannot come to college. Because they don't have access to scholarships, they have to pay way more because they are not considered citizens, right? That's the situation with the dreamers. You have heard that, right? Kids that have come to this country when they were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old with the parents. They were able to go to high school. They were able to benefit from education. Now, they are educated. Now, they just want to contribute. They want to better their education or eventually work and contribute to us. And we're telling them, no. These are kids that this is their own country that they know. This is the only language that they speak. This is the only culture that they are aware of. And yet, we're not giving them the opportunity, now that they're educated, to contribute to us. It makes no sense. Why? It's not economical. It's simply political. It's simply because constituents keep having these ideas. They don't pay taxes. They're drug dealers. And they take our services. Right? What services? Really? I mean, emergency services? Yes. We know that undocumented immigrants use less emergency services than Americans, first of all. Secondly, providing emergency services really is of national safety and security. It's not even about being kind. It's like, listen, if you come to this country and you have Ebola and you're from West Africa, oh, no, I'm sorry, you are not, I'm not going to treat you. It doesn't make sense, right? The Ebola is going to pass and pass and pass. So yes, emergency services is humane, but it's also good policy existing in every world. We'll take care of you initially. We'll make sure that you are able to live and make sure that you don't expand any particular disease. So yes, they can access that. And they can access education, thank God. And I think it's a good way to be of service. But the majority of them are really not coming so much for the education. And this is something that we're going to keep exploring right now. Anyway, I don't want to really bore you with a lot of information, but the bottom line that I want to share with you, we have explored the legal perspective, right? The illegal alien, that is a label that doesn't help and is not fair and is not neutral, where we consider that we're not calling illegal businessmen or illegal drivers or whatever. We've talked about historical perspective, how we have been welcome of immigrants, but at some point, because of political problems, because of the Americans coming to this country, it became a problem. And how that problem persists, because there are all these myths, beliefs, that they are, diring our social services, that they are not paying taxes, that they are sometimes not learning the language. Well, you could argue that that's one of the questions here, but we know that they make an effort. But surely it's not easy when you come as an adult to learn a new language or to be proficient in it. But the vast majority are integrated, and actually English as a second education is very successful, and it's out of, we need more of that because there is demand for it. So immigrants are really taking that and are taking advantage of any opportunity given to them to learn the language and the culture. Most of them. Of course, we're talking about most people. We cannot generalize 100%. Okay? So, just before I continue, we see that politically it's a problem. Economically, we know it's a benefit. Right? It makes ours more productive. It allows certain industries to be here. It allows us to go to the market and buy the lettuce and tomato for a lower price, and we all like that, right? So we know that it's helping economically. But because it's a problem politically and economically it's helpful, we're encountering this situation where we're not able to know what to do with them, and we focus on the fact that they're illegals, and surely enough, the politicians, they know that to get votes, they have to be tough on crime. So what is that they do? They promote ideas like deportation, right? Except that it doesn't really work. It's not realistic. Do you think we can get 12 million people and deport them? No. Not feasible. Not only is it not feasible for us with our resources to do that, it would devastate our economies. There are certain towns that have done little experiments by having more anti-immigrant stance. For example, Hazeltown, New Jersey. And what they found out is that when they created this environment where immigrants felt like they were somehow discriminated, undocumented immigrants, because they were asked, they were stopped by any particular violation and then tried to put into jail or whatever the case, or some states, those immigrants have led the community and have devastated the local economy because these immigrants are actually buying goods. They are consumers. They are helping the local economy, not only providing jobs for the companies at a lower rate, but they are also helping the economy. So we know that economically it's a good thing, but we know that politically it's a problem. And because politicians want to be tough on crime, they come with these policies of deportation that is not helping, that is not feasible. By the way, here's a good question. It is estimated that there are 5 million kids, American citizens, that their parents are undocumented. So we send them back home. What would we do with the kids? 5 million. Doesn't seem to be really a feasible, great idea. But that's what we hear when politicians are really debating. Something that cannot be implemented. Yeah, it can be implemented at a low level, and we're doing that. Obama is doing that strongly. And we, every day, we really send back home thousands of people. And there is a little bit of a pressure by a lot of people with some compassion and understanding of their communities and churches and whatnot to say, listen, if you're going to deport the people that beyond crossing the border have committed some other type of crime in the U.S. But don't deport, the poor dreamers, the kids that have been here studying with us, that this is the only, culture that they know, that they have never committed a crime. And to that extent, we tried to pass the DREAM Act, which was a possibility for these students to legalize their situation, not to be citizens, just to legalize the situation. We couldn't. The Congress couldn't do that because, again, congressmen are interested in getting an election and being tough on crime. And of course, that sounds like amnesty, when in fact it's not amnesty. They're going to pay a fine, and you pay a fine when you drive your car over the speed limit, and you're going to get back in line. You're going to go through a process, and it's going to be good for our economy, and they're going to be able to contribute with their work right now. But because of that, we couldn't pass the DREAM Act. So now there is the DACA, Deferred Act, approved with executive powers by Obama, that allows these students to defer the deportation for 2 years and eventually able to work for 2 years. But it's kind of a Band-Aid, hoping that eventually will pass more comprehensive immigration reform. It hasn't happened yet. We're waiting for it, and it is because of the political climate, which is what you were asking in this other question, the political climate that is impeding this. And this political climate is based and driven by, to be honest with you, ignorance. The fact that there is not enough information of the perspective of the immigrants as far as their contribution to our society. And I'll be very specific. The studies show the following. Most immigrants contribute greater than what they get. There is a percentage, small percentage, about 18% that do not. Why? Because they are recent immigrants. So it is true that the immigrants that have been here for less than 5 years, to the extent that they haven't had the time yet to fully incorporate to the workplace and pay their taxes for a lot of years, are still in the negative, meaning that they may be still receiving more benefits than what they can contribute. For example, benefit of getting their kid in high school. But that's just for the minority of them. The majority that have been here for over 5 years, the majority of those 12 million people among us, their contribution has been greater. So we cannot use the very recent immigrants to make this extrapolation that they are taking things from our services. You guys follow me? All right. I will give you an opportunity. Questions or comments before I go to the next step, which is my way to solve this mess. Go ahead.
How to stop government to take votes?
How to what?
To stop government to take vote of us. When it comes to vote, they go to immigrants to take vote. When they get power, they start against us. How do you stop that?
Well, first of all, by attending events like this one, whenever possible, by really focusing on real information and facts so that we can understand the contribution of immigrants to our society, not just in the past, but nowadays, whether they are documented or not documented. But in this particular case, talking about the not documented. And then, of course, by exercising our power of vote, for sure, by writing letters, to papers, and by all of us taking action that I'm going to speak a little bit in the next segment, that I'm going to give you a direction of what is possible. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I guess mine's just kind of a comment because I guess I personally just don't understand why in this country such a small percentage of the population, meaning the undocumented immigrants, is such a huge deal. I mean, more people can't read in America than there are undocumented immigrants. More people go hungry in America than there are undocumented immigrants. So I just don't understand why so many people are like illegals. I mean, I just don't understand why it's such a huge deal when 1 in 6 kids goes hungry. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
You could argue that they are a scapegoat for a lot of other issues. And when it comes to the economy, we've gone through crises and situations, and it's kind of easy to say, well, that's because we have a lot of people coming here. Of course, there are other people that consider there is some sort of cultural invasion because we have people coming that speak a different language. I mean, there are different perceptions. But honestly, I agree with you. There definitely, even the fact that we consider it a problem, instead of seeing it as a benefit based on what we know economically, shows that there is a bias in how we relate to this issue. And the politicians are kind of, exploiting that without full awareness of the benefits that our economies, that our communities are having based on the contribution of these undocumented immigrants. So thank you for your question. Go ahead.
I think since we are in college, we should address the fact that most immigrants are actually educated people from where they came from. Because it comes to my understanding that most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, most of the time when you are speaking to, say, an American native,
Yes.
their perception to you is that you are an immigrant, you are uneducated. I think they should have panel discussion like this one to actually educate people that those people, just because the English doesn't sound like yours, it doesn't mean they are uneducated. They're not at the same level of your education. I think that's
I get it.
a living point. You should address that.
I get it. Thank you. I'll talk a little bit about that. Go ahead.
I have a comment. Many people around the world, they say that U.S. is the greatest country in the world. That's fine. But in the U.S., many people, they don't realize that what makes U.S. the greatest country in the globe is that all those people like immigrants, that we are here struggling with language, like our family are at home in our country, and we are here trying to help this country to get higher. And why the government, why other people don't help those people who are coming to do something better for this country? And
Okay.
at this moment, we are here from another country trying to study coming to college, and at this moment there are millions of Native American, not native, but children that have born in the U.S. that they are out of the school because they don't want to study.
Mhm.
And we are here like trying to get an education and be good like for this country.
Yeah, and some of documented go to the military service, are fighting for America, and yet they cannot sometimes, integrate in our society, and they are still. So you have a good point, and the point about education. I mean, that is definitely one of those stereotypes that they are all uneducated, when in fact some of them are well educated, but unfortunately, given the situation, end up working in low wages jobs because they don't have other ways. But they could be very well educated. The majority of them, I have to say, are unskilled workers. And we have a system of visas, because talking about the difficulties, it's really, really difficult to work, to come in this country. I mean, unless you have a direct relative and you have a path that way, or you really marry and you can really prove over the years that it's a marriage of love, because there are many ways in which the country is trying to protect that from becoming a scam. The only way that really you can come to this country is if you are an investor and you have like $1 million and you can give jobs to at least 10 Americans, and you can prove that. And yes, you can do that. And eventually, we have some of the tech companies in our country that are very, very productive, that are really the symbol of America, America being the greatest country and whatnot. The Googles of the world that are actually immigrants that came here, as investors, and they were able to create jobs and eventually prosper that way. But then there are others that are really, create the fabric of our economy, right? That we need them, that are making us more productive. If I happen to have a gardener that is working for me and a nanny that is working for me for $7 an hour, and that allows me to keep my job and I'm making $15 an hour, that's good for me. So there is a benefit. But unfortunately, it's just the lack of education. Truthfully speaking, the fact that politicians are debating, and their debate is all based on deportation and a second thing. What is the second thing that they talk about policy to stop immigration? What is the second? Deportation, we really,
Security, border.
Border Patrol.
Yeah.
Now let me give you a statistic about this.
Okay, I'd like to ask, don't you think the ethnicity plays a huge role in all that? Because we don't see that a huge wave of white Europeans coming in here anymore. Most of them, I believe, because I don't have the numbers neither, are people coming from Latin America.
Yes. Well, I will explain. I mean, there is this, but let me first talk about the Border Patrol, because this is something that is also a fact that is not known. And we are here to talk about. You already hear what you hear in the media and through politicians. I'm not a pundit. I'm not a politician. I'm not here to polarize you. If anything, I'm here to unite you in finding possible solutions. But let me tell you this statistic, and then we'll move on to the perspective that I think can be helpful, because I have like 5 minutes to wrap this up. Okay, and I thank you for your patience. For those of you that are getting into your lunchtime, just give me 5 minutes of your time. Between 1992 and 2009, the amount of money that we put into Border Patrol in building a wall tripled. This is taxpayers' money that we're paying. During that amount of time, between 1992 and 2007, the amount of people that crossed the border doubled. Okay, hold on. Okay. Hold on. So we're putting more money into doing things, and some people are coming. What's going on? So allow me to talk about a different perspective, not the political, the economical, the historical, or the legal. Allow me to talk to you for a second about the humanitarian perspective, just for a moment. From the humanitarian perspective, what we do, instead of reacting with animosity, with preconceived ideas, with being entitled to our, nationality, feeling like we're victims of the people coming here and taking our jobs or taking our services. Instead of doing that, what we do is we strip ourselves from that sense of nationality and those preconceived ideas. And from a humanitarian perspective, we're going to find a way to relate to other human beings just as human beings. We're all human beings. And from that perspective, what truly makes sense, instead of reacting, is to ask ourselves this question. Why are they coming here? Why? What is the root cause? Because only if we address the root cause, we will be able to find, good, effective solutions to it. So why are they coming here? You guys can tell me. Why?
Better life.
Huh?
Better life.
Better life.
Religious freedom.
Religious freedom.
More opportunity and job.
Opportunity, jobs.
Safer living conditions.
Safer living conditions. to support families back home that are depleted from resources. Yeah, that's true. Here, listen, we can talk about this, but I'm going to wrap it up. I don't have a lot of time. So here's the thing. There is few people that come because they are refugees for, political reasons, religious reasons, for sure. And there are maybe a few that are coming because of safety, and surely we have had an influx of young kids that came here for safety. And we talked about that, how, our climate has contributed to this unsafe in their homelands in a way. But the majority of them, I mean, I'm talking about 87% of them, of the 12 million, 87% of them are coming here because of economic hardships at home, are coming here specifically because of economic inequality. And what is driving that economic inequality? From a humanitarian perspective, we need to go to the facts. And I'm going to share with you one that is very telling. The biggest reason is NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement. I'm talking about the most recent influx of immigrants until we had the crisis in this country and there were no more jobs and they stopped coming because there were not as many jobs. NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement, passed in 1992 by Bill Clinton. While Bill Clinton was president, it was a bipartisan law, and said, we live in this globalized world. What about if we eliminate tariffs that are separating us from Mexico? And that way, we can sell our goods over there and they can sell their goods here and whatnot. And it passed. Let me tell you what is the actual situation with this. In the US, we have strong agricultural conglomerates, huge corporations that are very powerful, so much so that they have lobbyists in Congress. These are the lobbyists that are trying to influence the congressmen and saying, hey, listen, if you want to get some support for your campaign, consider, helping our local farmers. Local farmers, mainly huge industrial conglomerates. Let me give you an example. The corn industry in the US receives annually close to 12 billion with a B, of monies in subsidies. Not because they really need them, because they are profitable, but simply because they have that power through the lobbyists. Now, on top of that subsidies, they don't have tariffs to sell the goods in Mexico. So now they are selling corn to Mexicans cheaper than the local farmers. So what do you think the thousands upon thousands of local farmers did when their economy was devastated, when they couldn't compete with these huge conglomerates anymore because of NAFTA? What do you think they did?
They closed.
They closed the business? Sure. I mean, local farmers, yeah. What else? They sold to the cartels?
No, to the conglomerates. I mean, they couldn't compete, so.
They sold to them?
Bankrupt.
Yeah, and some of them, truthfully, maybe were lured by, when they lost their jobs and the economy was devastated, maybe they were lured by cartels, maybe cultivate something that shouldn't. But the majority of them, what did they do?
They migrated here.
Bingo. They came here. And we're referring to them as illegal aliens. Here is the possibility for all of us, because I only have 3 minutes and I want to stick to the time. We can either react with anger and animosity based on preconceived ideas that are not factual, that are driving these politicians to do nothing about this issue. Or we can respond as human beings with love and solidarity, with the understanding that we are all co-creators of the circumstances that are displacing millions of people in this world. And the advantage when we respond from that perspective is that we can find good, effective solutions. Because instead of focusing so much on deporting that we know is not effective, or building a wall that is costing us a lot of money and not having effects, we will focus on foreign policy, that which you will not hear the politicians to talk about. Foreign policy. So I want 5 people to come here for a moment to share 5 ideas real fast, and with this we're going to wrap it up. 5 volunteers. All you need to do is just come here and read. Very simple. 5. Come here, fast. These are going to be possible, effective solutions that open up when we have a humanitarian perspective. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give a copy to this one. We still need two more people. Two more people. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, though. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do the last one. Okay. Somebody else wants to come? This can be helpful. Okay, so these are common sense immigration policies for a globalized world. These are possibilities that open up. Okay? That open up. And by the way, before I do this, here is my label to you, just because that was one of the questions. What label can be helpful? I'll give it to you. We talk about illegal aliens, not helpful. Undocumented immigrants, more neutral, possibility. Here is the real label if we approach this from a humanitarian perspective. Hear me out. Economic refugees. That's what they are when we are, with our policies, driving them out of their homelands. Desperate, so desperate that they would cross that border on top, throughout, underneath, or around like most of them do, lose their lives many times. 600 people die every year crossing the border, leaving behind their culture, their language, their families, to come here because they are desperate. It's not just about having a better life. It's just about making a living. And when you're desperate, you do whatever it takes. That's the only thing that explains why we put more monies and still more people were coming during those years. Okay, so this is number one.
Raise living standards in Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. We should work with our neighbors south of the border to strengthen small and medium-sized enterprises, the sector that employs the largest number of people in Latin America. We should also look for ways to make the money sent home by immigrants a transformative force for sustainable local development.
Okay, stop for a second. That was a question about they come here to send money back home. Hey, what about instead of criminalize them and condemning them, what about if we do this? You know, out of the box idea, just because we're thinking in humanitarian terms. What about if we use them? They're already working, they're contributing to our economy, right? What about we use them so that we create policies, like with Mexico, for example, where when they send home money back home through MoneyGram or Western Union, 10% of the money that they're sending back home ought to be utilized to develop the local economy, to give subsidies to those local entrepreneurs that are creating jobs back home so that no more people have to come here. See, now we're using them creatively to help back home. It's not even our monies, just a possibility. You won't hear this in the news, by the way, or through politicians. So just accept this as a possibility for you as a new generation to consider solutions that are more effective for the long run. Second idea.
Reopen the debate on the future of the Latin American countryside. We should stop promoting export orientation, agribusiness, and instead support small farmer organizations around the world in their call for food sovereignty. The right to regulate domestic agricultural production and trade in order to achieve sustainable development objectives is the core principle of food sovereignty. We should also support fair trade, through which farmers receive fair compensation for their products.
We're not engaging in fair trade when we're subsidizing our industry so that they are so competitive outside that they can sell goods to everywhere, and we're ruining the economies of the local farmers. We need to understand that a good policy is to let countries feed themselves. That basic human understanding will help those economies and will allow people to stay back home. Third.
Reduce the economic insecurities that are fueling the anti-immigrant backlash in the United States through raising the minimum wage, strengthening labor laws to protect unions, expanding public health care, and increase training benefits, particularly for those displaced by economic globalization.
Okay, so that's the big political thing or whatnot, but what about the corporations that are benefited the most to contribute with training programs so that people that are moving from one industry to another have the necessary skills to incorporate in another industry, or whatever the case may be, because they are the biggest beneficiaries of all this workforce that is available for us at such a low wages. And then what about helping those people that are at the lowest level of our society so they don't have to pit against each other, and scapegoating the immigrants, when in fact there is more structural problems that we need to address to solve this problem for good. Okay, fourth one.
Cancel impoverished countries crippling debt without imposing onerous conditions that deepen poverty or degrade the environment. We should press industrialized nations on multilateral financial institutions on this count. Organized group of immigrants could play a strong role in demanding that their government or regional apply savings for debt cancellation to more needed investment in human resource development.
Okay, any of you guys are paying like more than 30% in debt with your credit card maybe, or more than
How much?
30%? You are? Okay. So here's the thing. Some of these countries, they do receive monies from taxes. You know where that money is going? Back to our countries. Why? Because they're indebted with us, and some of them are paying 32, 33, 34% of interest rate. So now, instead of being able to invest in their economy, they have to send their monies overseas to IMF or the World Bank, etc. Now, here is a way to do this. What about if we work with them? We reduce the rate of the interest, or simply cancel the interest, so they have more monies to, and when we work in agreement so that the money that they can save is invested in the local economies. So we don't have to have such an influx of people in our countries. Go ahead.
5, devise a set of policies that bring immigrants out of the shadows and allow them to contribute fully to the well-being of our country. These policies should include provisions for family reunification. Every foreigner residing in the U.S. should have the opportunity to become a legal permanent resident with provisions for becoming a naturalized U.S. citizen in the future. Anyone who decides to remain outside the law should be identified, investigated, and if proven to be a threat, deported.
Okay, so how are we safer? Are we safer having 12 million people that we don't know? Or are we safer creating a system that we can allow these people to come out of the shadows and then find the actual criminals, so to speak, so that we can deal with them and eventually deport them? Okay, so the comprehensive immigration reform that was passed bilaterally at the Senate level was an opportunity for them, for the majority of them, that the only violation is crossing the border, to legalize their situation, not necessarily to become citizens, and definitely not an amnesty. They all have to pay their fines, go to the back of and go through a process. And you know what? A study done by New York Times, May 2013, proved that passing this comprehensive immigration reform will bring 1.5 trillion of money to our economy. Imagine that with the debt that we have. But unfortunately, we are not doing that because of the political divisiveness. So do me a favor, raise your hand if you want to get a copy of this handout, and I'm going to have them pass it around, and I'm going to wrap this presentation now. So just raise your hand so we can pass them. And whatever are left, you can bring them here. All right, so I'm going to wrap this. Yes, and I have cards. We haven't finished yet. Please give me a second. Give me a second. I'm going to tell you a story to make it more personal. Let me, Renata, let me use the mic. All right. So listen, to wrap it up, I'm going to tell you a personal story that hopefully can be helpful for you as you realize that maybe there is something you can do about this. When I finished my film, Not Turning Back, I was invited to go to a human rights center where there were kids that came here as minors from Salvador, from Mexico, from Honduras. They were 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. They came here precisely so that they could send monies back home. That's how desperate the families were back home. And when I did this screening of Not Turning Back, the director of this human rights center where I was doing the screening, he came to me and he told me, you know what, there is a kid that just arrived. We don't know anything about this kid except that he fell down from a freight train as he was trying to come to the country. He injured his head, and he was found at a church where he went to get some food because they noticed he was a minor. They reported him to the police, and the police took him to our human rights center. I said, okay, no problem. So after the screening of Not Turning Back, I went to talk to this kid, and I said, hey, so what's your name? He said, Manuel. He seemed a little disoriented, out of place, like didn't belong. You know how that is. I said, Manuel, so tell me a little bit about your family, where you come from. First thing he told me is, I don't have a family. Now that caught me by surprise because most of them actually come to support their families back home. I said, so Manuel, tell me about your story. I said, well, I was abandoned at an orphanage when I was a baby. And I don't know my parents. And I was raised in this orphanage in Ciudad Juarez until I was 8 years old. But the orphanage was poorly run. I felt I was abused, and therefore I ran away. And I've been living in the streets ever since. And he told me about everything you can imagine living in the streets, right? Being subjected to abuse, being involved in drugs and whatnot, the fact that his best friend was killed, actually, and that he came to this country really with a dream of maybe building an orphanage for kids like him. Very touching story. Next thing I asked Manuel is, so Manuel, so what would you like most in life now that you're here? And he told me, a family. And that moment, I think my heart was open when I was 5 years old. I couldn't avoid it. So I asked Manuel, would you adopt me as your father? He was taken aback. He was like, I said, you don't need to give me an answer right now. I'll give you my card, just call me. Truthfully speaking, he didn't call me. But 2 weeks later, I was supposed to go back to this human rights center where I do volunteer work. And I said, Manuel, you didn't call me. How is that? He said, oh, I didn't believe you. I said, Manuel, I really mean it. Would you adopt me as your father? And he said yes. And from that moment on, he called me dad. And he called my girlfriend mom. She was not very happy initially about it, but we brought him home. He went to high school. He had not gone to school for many years. He didn't speak English. He was taking drugs. Well, not only he learned English, and he finished high school, and he cleaned all his act together, but he actually went from there to job corps. He got a job at Home Depot. He's a manager at Home Depot. He's 26 years old, still living with me, but he's in the process of buying his first home and moved to his first house. Now, thank you. Truthfully, it has nothing to do with me. I really mean it. This is the lesson here. This is the point. It has to do with the power of love. It really does. I understand this is a very complicated issue. I understand that the government and the politicians are not doing what they could. We can, of course, exercise our power with vote, but each one of us individually, we can do something. We can see what it is. We can relate to each other in a more humanitarian way, connect with our common humanity. And instead of react with fear, animosity, preconceived ideas, fear, we can respond with love and solidarity. Instead of looking at them as illegal aliens that we're victims of, we can see them as economic refugees. Their way of life has been gone, and they're doing their best to feed their families. And if we do that, and we can open our hearts to that possibility, then we can do what has happened to Manuel, really. He's a wonderful kid. He speaks in public like I do. He has completely, enriched my life. So I'm not telling you this so that you adopt a kid from Mexico. Please don't take me wrong. But I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you may see a gardener in your neighborhood. You can just say, hola, and smile. You can make everybody feel comfortable at home. You can do your part of work in opening up your heart instead of getting so caught in your own limited beliefs, to welcome and be friendly to everyone, no matter their circumstances or their legal status for that matter. And if you feel that it's a possibility that has opened up in you, then I think this presentation was well worth it, and I thank you so much for your time today.